Hey guys, it's Daniel. Welcome back.
The relationship between Dime and Vinny during Damageplan, was their relationship the same, or did, I guess for lack of a better word, the bitterness of how Pantera ended, did it affect them as people in any way?
Yeah, it affected all of us. We thought Pantera would live forever.
Hmm.
It was too big, it was too powerful, it was too good to be not only destroyed but destroyed in that fashion so publicly.
Hmm.
And it was a huge betrayal of all of that brotherhood and the way that it happened. And what was going on with Damageplan was that it originally started as just me and Dime in the studio, and it was going to be his solo album. Because when we got done with Reinventing the Steel tour cycle, we were in Japan, and we said, Philip was getting ready to make a down record because Philip made the demand that, hey, I'm not making another damn Pantera record until I make the next down record and I get to do something different, because he was growing weary of Pantera. So not only did that happen, but Dime and Vinny were the ones that went to bat for Phil to get his record deal for Down 2. So they were the reason he got his deal with Elektra. And so during that space, well, Dime was going to go do his thing musically, and that's what we started on. That's what Damageplan ended up being. But as we got further through the process with Damageplan, and Vinny started hearing some of the stuff we were doing, and he was like, "Man, I can lay some drums on that. That'll sound killer. Let's do this." And Dime's only stipulation was, I don't want it to sound like a Pantera record. This is my record. And he was like, fine, but let's just go do it. And so we started all working together, me and Dime and Vinny, on those songs. And then as we came through, the next month or two, after we're still working on this stuff, here comes all this stuff on the internet of Phil and Rex talking trash about this whole thing. And we're literally sitting there looking at each other going, what is going on? What is happening? And that was the beginning of the end right there. And yeah, it changed them. And then at a certain point, they were like, we've got to move on. We have to, there's no reconciliation here. We have to move forward. And yeah, they weren't real happy about going from playing arenas back down to playing clubs, but that's what they did because they loved the music. They wanted to keep making music. And so they just kept moving forward, and that was going to be the thing. Well, we're not going to do Pantera right now. We're going to do Damageplan. Hell, we didn't even have a name for it for the first 10 months that we were working on it. We worked on it for over a year before we released it. So yeah, it was an odd time, and it changed all of us, not just Diamond and Vinny, but me too, and a bunch of dudes that were on the original crew. And it just, yeah, it changes a lot of shit.
Were you there on tour with Damageplan the night of Dimebag's death?
I was not. I was home. I was on that tour about 6 months before all that went down. I got to a point on the Damageplan tour where my drinking had taken over and I didn't want to be there anymore. The beautiful thing about those guys was, hey man, if you need help or you need a break, take it. And that's essentially what happened. And I left the tour because I was not happy anymore. Me and the tour manager got into a fight, and I was tired and just beat down. And so I went home. Yeah, I was not there that night. And had I been there, who knows how my life would be right now.
Well, I can almost tell you, and not to elongate this conversation about that, but one of the things that I remember when Sterling called me that night, and I remember very specifically where I was, and the mood went from, hey, we're getting ready for, the holiday season, so on and so forth, to shit. Man, it's almost like tunnel vision. The moment that Sterling got those words out of his mouth, it's like, my whole world has now changed. I'm not anywhere as close to to these guys as Sterling was. But I don't know if you remember this, Sterling, but one of the things that I said to you is, I thank God above that you weren't there.
Yeah, I remember.
Because
I was pretty obliterated, but I remember.
I think you might have been all up in that.
Oh, yeah, I most definitely would have. The whole fight or flight thing. What do you do when you're faced with that? And no one knows until it's that time. So I don't know. I don't know what would have happened. And everybody says that. I'm glad you weren't there. And but there's that survivor's guilt that happens.
Sure.
Lots of therapy later. I can tell you that that's just the way that was meant to be.
Yeah.
It is what it is.
That's nuts. When that happened, I mean, I guess, Sterling, this would be a question for you. Was it a guaranteed Damageplan was done, or was that not even something people were thinking about at the time?
I think it was a guarantee done. Just like at that point, I think it was also a guarantee that Pantera was done. Dime was the heart and soul of both of those bands. And with Vinnie included, they were the ones that came up with all of that stuff. And without those two, it never would have happened. I'm not belittling Rex or Phil or their parts in any of this. But yeah, both those two bands were completely done when that happened. And I think that it basically put the cork in a very short and powerful legacy. And also that it put the end curly Q on this will never happen again kind of thing. Any legitimate reincarnation furthering of any legitimacy to any of that, it will never happen again, because they only made one of those, man. They made one dime and that was it.
Did Vinnie ever recover fully from Dime's death, or did that never leave him?
Never left him.
I don't think it's left any of us.
No, it changed all of us in different ways. But no, after that, he went on to do Hell Yeah. I was there for all of that. And he got to go out and play and have the joy of music back in his life after his brother died, which he thought he would never find again, but he did. That's good. Not like that, not on that level. And I don't mean financially or successfully, but just that bond that he had with his brother musically. But yeah, that he had a hole in his heart. He was literally a different person after his brother died for the 13 years that he was still around. He was not the same person.
Yeah, it's sad. But I mean, it goes to show how close they were and how important that relationship was. So
they were not twins, but they should have been twins.
Obviously, we know what happened. If that didn't happen, if Dimebag was still with us, was Damageplan going to be a long-term band, or was there always the thought of reuniting with Pantera eventually?
Knowing Dime and Vinnie as people, I would say that Pantera would have eventually gotten together, and it would have been Dime that would have facilitated that. Because Dime was the kind of person that didn't like holding on to that shit. And it would have eventually righted itself, I believe.
I agree with Sterling. Sterling was much closer to all of that than I was when all of that started going down. But just once again, I've said this before, the character, a lot of folk think of, Pantera being this just angry or maybe aggressive, this or that. But the truth is the I don't even know what the right word for this would be, but the human element with these guys was just impeccable. They
could have been assholes, but they weren't.
They weren't. Not ever. And cool. I think it's fair to say Sterling and I we've encountered a few of those along the way.
Oh yeah. Hell, I encountered some yesterday.
Sorry, dude.
It never ends. It never ends.
Sorry, man.
No, man, I think Dime would have totally righted that stuff. They had they're brothers. They fight. The bands fight. It's a marriage. It's a 4 or 5 way marriage, and you're gonna fight. You're gonna argue. Even the best marriages need maintenance. Even the best relationships have rough moments, and just multiply that times 4, and that's the dynamic you have in a room full of dudes that are trying to create and have a common vision. Just that alone, in and of itself, is a most difficult task. To get someone to share the same vision with another person. And if you get 4 people that share that same vision, even for a minute, that's an amazing thing.